Between the Buttons is the fifth British and seventh American studio album by the Rolling Stones, released on January 20, 1967 in the UK and February 11 in the US as the follow-up to Aftermath. It was the beginning of the Stones' brief foray into psychedelia. In 2003, the American version of Between the Buttons, which included Ruby Tuesday and Let's Spend the Night Together, was ranked number 355 on Rolling Stone magazine's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time. Recording and background sessions for the album began on August 3, 1966 and lasted until the 11th at Los Angeles RCA Studios during the Rolling Stones' 1966 American tour. David Hassinger was the engineer for the album. Several songs were worked on. The backing tracks of 6 songs that would appear on the album were recorded, as with those of Let's Spend the Night Together, and Who's Driving Your Plane? B-side of Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby, Standing in the Shadow. Released as a single in late September. The band returned to London and sessions continued at IBC Studios from August 31 until September 3. Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby, Standing in the Shadow? Was completed to be released on September 23 before the Stones embarked on their 7th British tour, which lasted into early October and was their last UK tour until 1971. The second block of recording sessions for Between the Buttons began on November 8 at the newly opened Olympic Sound Studios in Barnes, London, and alternated between there and Pi Studios until November 26. During this time the bulk of the album was completed, including vocal and other overdues on the previously recorded backing tracks and mixing. Ruby Tuesday was also completed. Around the same time producer Andrew Loog Oldham was also preparing the US-only live album Got Live If You Want It. A contractual requirement from London Records that contained live performances from their recent British tour as well as studio tracks overdubbed with audience noise. After that album's release on December 10, a final overdubbing session for Buttons was held at Olympic Studio on December 13, 1966 before Oldham took the tapes back to RCA Studios in Hollywood for final mixing and editing. Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys was invited down to RCA Studios during the mixdown of My Obsession, which remains one of his favorite Rolling Stones songs. The album was recorded using 4-track machines and initial tracks were pre-mixed to make room for overdues. Mick Jagger felt the songs lost clarity. He commented during an interview, "We bounced it back to do overdues so many times we lost the sound of it. The songs sounded so great, but later on I was really disappointed with it." He commented further, "I don't know, it just isn't any good. Backstreet Girl is about the only one I like." In an interview with New Musical Express, he even called the rest of the album more or less rubbish. Between the Buttons was the last album wholly produced by Oldham, with whom the Stones fell out in mid-1967 during the recording sessions for their Satanic Majesty's request. Artwork: the photo shoot for the album cover took place in November 1966 on Primrose Hill in North London. The photographer was Gerd Mankiewicz, who also shot the band photos for the cover of Out of Our Heads. The shoot took place at 5:30 in the morning following an all-night recording session at Olympic Studios. Using a homemade camera filter constructed of black card, glass and Vaseline, Mankiewicz created the effect of the Stones dissolving into their surroundings. The goal of the shoot was, in Mankiewicz's words, to capture the ethereal, druggy feel of the time. That feeling at the end of the night when dawn was breaking and they'd been up all night making music, stoned. Brian Jones' disheveled and ghostly appearance on the cover disturbed many of his fans, and critic David Dalton wrote that he looked like a doomed albino raccoon. Brian Jones was lurking in his collar. Mankiewicz commented years later, "I was frustrated because it felt like we were on the verge of something really special and he was messing it up." But the way Brian appeared to not give a shit is exactly what the band was about. Outtakes from this photo session were later used for the cover and inner sleeves of the 1972 ABKCO compilation release More Hot Rocks. The back cover of Between the Buttons is dominated by a 6-panel cartoon accompanied by a rhythmic poem drawn by drummer Charlie Watts. When Watts asked Oldham what the title of the album would be, he told him it was Between the Buttons, a term meaning undecided. Watts gave the phrase to the title of his cartoon, which in turn became the title of the album. Release and reception. Between the Buttons, like many British long players, differed between its UK and US versions. The UK edition was issued on January 20, 1967 on Decca Records, concurrently with a separate single, Let's Spend the Night Together BW Ruby Tuesday. As was common in the British record industry at the time, the single did not appear on the album. Between the Buttons reached number 3 in the UK. In August 2002, both editions of Between the Buttons were reissued in a new remastered CD and SACD digipack by ABKCO Records. All reissues of the album since 1968 have been in stereo. The album's mono mix has yet to see an official CD release. While most reissues have used the US track listing to maximize profit by featuring the two hit singles, the UK version was reissued by ABKCO in 2003 on 180-gram vinyl in the US. According to critic Robert Christgau, Between the Buttons was among the greatest rock albums, and AllMusic's Richie Unterberger hailed it as one of the Rolling Stones' strongest, most eclectic LPs. In a retrospective review for Entertainment Weekly, David Brown called the album a cheeky set of sardonic swinging London vaudeville rock, while Billboard magazine's Christopher Walsh wrote that it's brimming with overlooked gems, the band delivering a captivating blend of folky, Beatles-esque pop and tough bluesy rockers. Tom Moon wrote in the Rolling Stone album guide that the album was lighter and thinner than Aftermath and, having belatedly discovered pop melody, Jagger and Richards were suddenly overdosing on the stuff. Track listing: all songs written by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. American release: in the US, the album was released by London Records on February 11, 1967. Let's Spend the Night Together and Ruby Tuesday was slotted onto the album, while Backstreet Girl and Please Go Home were removed. With Ruby Tuesday reaching number 1, Between the Buttons shot to number 2 in the US, going gold. In 2003, the American version of the album was ranked number 355 on Rolling Stone magazine's 500 Greatest Albums of All Time. Track listing: all songs written by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Personnel: The Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger lead and backing vocals, percussion, Keith Richards guitar, bass guitar, piano, organ, double bass, lead and backing vocals, Brian Jones guitar, piano, organ, vibraphone, recorder, saxophone, electric dulcimer, percussion, oscillator, harmonica, Bill Wyman bass guitar, double bass, organ, backing vocals, Charlie Watts drums, percussion, additional musicians, Jack Nitz piano, organ, harpsichord, Ian Stewart piano, Nick DeCaro accordion. Chart positions, album, singles, certifications, references.